Hey, Wembrook World Entertainment, and there's been a lot of cope surrounding Starfleet Academy, that the media just is doing everything to spin this thing as a success, and that it isn't doing any damage to the Star Trek brand. In fact, it's giving us some of the greatest stories ever told in the universe of Star Trek. And of course, episode 5 tried to resolve the mystery of Sisko. Did he return? Is he still with the Prophets? What happened to him? And now we're seeing some more cope where they're trying to say they did answer it, they didn't, even though reality is it already was answered in Deep Space Nine. But then after Deep Space Nine, it was also answered in not just comic books but novels that were canon. But now they're trying to say, no, this episode has actually removed all of that officially from canon. So let's have a look at this article that tries to break this down and gets practically everything wrong about why this was so stupid and the fact that Sisko did return, and we know that he returned and that he was set to return. So this is saying, the Star Trek Deep Space Nine series final, What You Leave Behind, left the door open just a tad for its lead, Captain Ben Sisko. Since the show's premiere, Sisko had become the emissary of the Prophets, who reside in a wormhole near planet Bajor. Sisko later learned he was always connected to the Prophets. His mother, Sarah, had been possessed by one when she gave birth to him. They kind of did the Blade type of thing. She was infected. All of a sudden, he has part Prophet in him. So, in What You Leave Behind, Sisko defeated his nemesis Dukat in the fire caves of Bajor and prevented the rise of an evil faction of prophets, the Pirates. With his work complete, Sisko ascended to be with the Prophets. He told his wife Cassidy he would return, but he couldn't promise when. Now, already you're starting to see where they're starting to get a few things wrong. Number one, it wasn't the fact that he defeated his Dukat and stopped the Pirates and that completed his work. He sacrificed himself. He was jumping into the fire with Dukat to stop Dukat from having the Pirates rise. The Prophets didn't just make him a saint, they saved him. They brought him in to be a prophet, which saved him from actually perishing in the fire caves. So now, Star Trek Starfleet Academy resolves Sisko's fate. In the episode, Series Alchemation Mill, it turns out that Sisko never came back. History's last record of him is his fight with Dukat on Bajor, and Starfleet officially lists him as MIA. Starfleet Academy has thus officially wiped several Star Trek comics and novels from any possible canon. A long-running series of novels published from 2001 to 2017 continued the story of DS9 after the series' conclusion, depicting Sisko returning in time for his and Cassidy's daughter to be born and resuming his role in Starfleet. In the 2023 comic Star Trek Godshock also depicted Sisko returning 3 years after What You Leave Behind. Not according to official Star Trek canon though, which now has no room for Godshock. It's important to remember why Series Alchemation Mill had to go about honouring Sisko this way. This is, by the way, where the cope comes in. In the lapse between when DS9 ended and now, Brooks retired from acting. That means it made more sense to write the episode with Sisko never coming back. The cope, what they're trying to say here is because Avery Brooks retired and doesn't want to do it anymore, that's why they wrote that Sisko never returned. Completely forgetting the fact, and it's a big standout fact, that this show is 1,000 years in the future. So it wouldn't have mattered if you said he returned 3 years after the events of What You Leave Behind. He still wouldn't be around in this show, you morons. So it says, unlike a TV show, a comic doesn't have to worry about casting. That's why Godshock can set itself 3 years after the DS9 final. Even though Brooks had aged much more than 3 years, the comic also features Sisko forming a new crew with other fan favourite Star Trek characters. His old second-in-command Worf, Dr. Beverly Crusher, and Data from Star Trek The Next Generation, Tom Paris from Voyager, and even Scotty himself from the original Star Trek. Getting all these characters together would have logistical complications on television, but not so for a comic. That's one reason that Star Trek comics and prose are the ideal medium for fan service stories and crossovers like Godshock. Now, you can see where they're already trying to say that the whole thing centers around this one comic story of Godshock, which came out in 2023, neglecting the fact that there's been stories about Sisko's return in books since 2001. DS9 went off the air, I believe it was in 99. It was either 98 or 99. I'm pretty sure it was 1999 when it went off the air. So you're talking about 2 to 3 years later that they start writing novels about Sisko's return from being with the Prophets back to the S9. But their whole focusing on this crap is to say, oh no, it's only the 2003 comic book that we have to follow. So Series Alchemation Mill has some plausible deniability since it is set so far in the future relative to Deep Space Nine. Now, this isn't them saying it's because Sisko would be dead. You'll see what I mean here. One could say this only means that history never recorded Sisko returning. But in the episode, Sisko's long-lived friend Dax and a holographic replica of his son Jake both spoke like they never saw him again. Then again, the Prophets don't do linear time, so perhaps Sisko is still planning to return to the 24th century one day. So you're seeing them trying to say, because Dax, who shouldn't even be alive, I did bring this point up and it's since been confirmed that I said in the video talking specifically about Dax being in this show that I'm pretty sure the symbionts don't actually live forever because they're not immortal. And it turns out, no, they live for roughly 800 years. So that symbiont of Dax should be long since dead. But no, it's still somehow alive and going strong. As for the replica of Jake, yeah, it was a holographic thing of Jake saying, oh, my father loved me and he loved Gumbo, and that's what you took away from it. And his next time when he comes back wasn't him talking about that he never saw him again. It was all in Sam's head, so it wasn't even real. But as for where the episode leaves us, it will bring mixed feelings for Star Trek Deep Space Nine fans. For one, it means Sisko broke his promise to Cassidy. However, Avery Brooks himself signed off on the Starfleet Academy tribute to him and Sisko, so presumably that means he was okay with Sisko never coming back. They're only saying that he signed off on it because they used that speech from his album. That isn't confirmed whether or not he gave them the go-ahead. We've heard nothing about, oh, Avery actually, he told us to go ahead and use that part of his album and stuff like that. Nothing about that has come about. Avery Brooks hasn't even come out to say he gave them the... This is simply going off their word that, oh yeah, Avery gave us his blessing. I call bullshit on that. Because if that's the case, why wouldn't he let you use his likeness? Like, there's absolutely no images of Sisko. Like, you see silhouettes in drawings and stuff, but you don't see Sisko. So the question is, why? They went to a museum, a Benjamin Sisko museum, and there's not a single image of Sisko there. Do you know what is there? And it was pointed out and I completely missed it. The typewriter, that an alternate reality of Sisko as a writer, not even as Sisko, but as this writer was using. Why would that typewriter be at that museum? It wasn't in the prime timeline. It wasn't even Sisko. It was this alternate reality. So why that thing is there, God only knows. But it just shows you they really don't know. But this cope now to try and defend this episode because they know the damage it's done and the fact that they've wrote it where people are going, but you're saying it was a mystery about where Cisco is. It wasn't a mystery. We know where he is. Everybody knew where he was, and everybody knew he would come back. And then the books that were official canon continued the story and said, yes, he did return. So it's just a joke at this stage. But hey, what do you guys think? Do you think we should still look at the books as canon? Because let's face facts here, with all the timelines they've given, especially in Stranger Worlds, none of this is official canon anyway. So none of this is the prime timeline. So that's not Dax we're looking at. Ben Sisko did return. We know this. And this show can get stuffed. But what do you guys think? Do let me know. And have you read any of those books or comics where Sisko returned? Let me know that as well. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers. And I'll catch you in the next one.